The story begins not with a battle or a proclamation, but with silence. An unnatural silence, broken only by the sounds of nature reclaiming what humans have abandoned. Somewhere in the aftermath of a global war, a group of British schoolboys find themselves marooned on a remote tropical island after their evacuation plane is shot down. No adults survive. No rules remain. At first, the island appears like a dream. Sunlit beaches, lush forests, clear lagoons, and an absence of authority that feels like freedom. The boys, ranging from young children to early adolescents, slowly emerge from the jungle, disoriented but alive. Among them is Ralph, a fair-haired boy with natural confidence, and Piggy, intelligent but physically weak, burdened by asthma and mocked for his appearance. Piggy's glasses, fragile and practical, become one of the first symbols of order and foresight in a place that has yet to understand its own danger. Using a conch shell discovered by Piggy, Ralph summons the other survivors. The shell's clear, commanding sound gathers the boys together, and in that moment, the illusion of civilization flickers into existence. Names are exchanged, introductions made, and for a brief time, the boys believe that adult structures can simply be recreated by agreement. They elect Ralph as their leader, not through wisdom or experience, but because he looks like someone who should lead. Jack Maridu, the red-haired commander of a choir group, is humiliated by the loss, but his pride remains sharp and dangerous. He is given control of the boys who will become hunters, a decision that will quietly shape the island's fate. At first, their goals are simple and hopeful. They believe they will be rescued soon, so they focus on building shelters and maintaining a signal fire to attract passing ships. Ralph insists on order and cooperation, echoing the values of the world they left behind. Piggy supports him with logic and long-term thinking, though his ideas are often ignored or ridiculed. Jack, however, grows increasingly obsessed with hunting. The island offers wild pigs, and Jack sees in the hunt a chance to assert dominance, to feel powerful in a world where his former authority as choir leader has evaporated. The boys' first attempt at hunting ends in failure. Jack hesitates at the critical moment, unable to kill a living creature. This hesitation enrages him, not because of hunger, but because it exposes weakness, something Jack cannot tolerate. From that moment on, his desire to kill becomes less about survival and more about proving something to himself. Meanwhile, Ralph and the others climb the island's mountain to ignite a signal fire, believing rescue will come quickly. They use Piggy's glasses to light the fire, unknowingly turning a symbol of intelligence into a tool of destruction. The fire quickly spirals out of control, consuming parts of the forest. In the chaos, one of the youngest boys, recognizable by a birthmark, goes missing. No one speaks his name. No one confirms his death. But a shadow settles over the group. The first unspoken acknowledgement that the island is not safe. As days pass, the boys' discipline begins to erode. Shelters collapse from neglect. Meetings grow disorderly. The conch shell, once a symbol of authority, loses its power as voices rise and interruptions multiply. Fear begins to take root, especially among the younger children, who speak of a mysterious beast lurking in the jungle. At first, the older boys dismiss these fears as childish imagination, but fear has a way of growing when left unanswered. Even Ralph begins to feel unease at night, listening to unfamiliar sounds and sensing the vast, indifferent darkness surrounding them. Jack, sensing an opportunity, exploits the boys' fear. He dismisses the beast publicly, yet uses the idea of danger to justify his growing authority as a hunter and protector. He paints his face with clay and charcoal, transforming himself into something unrecognizable, liberated from shame, accountability, and the rules of the old world. The mask does not hide Jack. It reveals him. Under its protection, he becomes crueler, more reckless, and more intoxicating to the boys who crave excitement over responsibility. Ralph struggles to maintain order, but leadership without enforcement proves fragile. The signal fire goes out while Jack and his hunters are away, lost in the thrill of the chase. When the ship passes the island unnoticed, Ralph's anger explodes. This moment marks a turning point. Rescue, once assumed, now feels uncertain. Hope begins to crack. The argument between Ralph and Jack becomes open and vicious, revealing that the island can no longer contain both civilization and savagery in balance. As night falls, the boys gather around the fire, when it exists, and listen to the jungle's whispers. The fear of the beast becomes real, not because it exists, but because belief gives it power. The island, once a paradise, now feels like a testing ground. And beneath the games, the laughter, and the childish arguments, something darker stirs, an ancient truth about human nature waiting to be unleashed. Days stretch on, the island begins to change, not in its shape or beauty, but in the way the boys see it. What once felt like a temporary playground now feels vast and indifferent, a place that watches rather than welcomes. The fear of the beast grows quietly at first, carried in whispers and half-finished sentences from the younger boys. They speak of something moving in the trees, something that comes in the dark. The older boys try to laugh it away, but laughter sounds thin when the night belongs to unfamiliar sounds and the jungle seems to breathe. Ralph calls meetings, clinging to the structure he believes will keep them sane. He reminds the boys of rules, of the importance of the signal fire, of shelters, of speaking only when holding the conch. Yet each rule feels more like a memory than a command. The boys listen with restless impatience, their attention drifting toward Jack and his hunters, who return from the forest painted, chanting, and carrying the raw excitement of bloodshed. The hunt gives them something Ralph cannot, a sense of belonging fueled by adrenaline and shared violence. Piggy, ever the voice of reason, tries to explain that the beast cannot exist in the way they imagine. He speaks of fear as something internal, something that lives inside people rather than in the shadows. But logic cannot compete with terror, especially not in children. Piggy's words fall flat, and his isolation deepens. His intelligence, once useful, now makes him an outsider. In a world sliding toward instinct, thinking becomes a liability. The tension between Ralph and Jack sharpens into open rivalry. Jack mocks the conch, dismisses meetings, and openly challenges Ralph's authority. He promises meat, protection, and freedom from rules. Where Ralph offers responsibility, Jack offers excitement. Slowly, boys begin to drift toward him, drawn by the thrill of the hunt and the illusion of power. Civilization demands effort. Savagery feels effortless. Night, a storm breaks over the island, violent and sudden. Thunder cracks the sky, and rain lashes the beach. The boys huddle together in fear, their imaginations inflamed by darkness and noise. In the chaos, they convince themselves they see the beast emerging from the forest. Panic explodes. What begins as a frantic dance turns into something far more dangerous, a mob driven by terror and instinct. In their blind frenzy, the boys attack a figure crawling toward them from the shadows. They strike, scream, and kill without understanding what they are doing. When the storm passes and the truth emerges, horror settles in. The figure they murdered was Simon, a quiet, introspective boy who had wandered into the forest, seeking peace and understanding. Simon had discovered that the feared beast was nothing more than the dead body of a parachutist tangled in the trees, a casualty of the war raging beyond the island. He had run to tell the others, to free them from their fear. Instead, he became its victim. His body is carried out to sea, surrounded by glowing creatures, as if the island itself mourns him. Simon's death marks a point of no return. The boys do not speak of it openly. They rationalize it as an accident, a mistake born of fear and confusion. But denial cannot erase guilt. Ralph, Piggy, and even the more sensible boys feel the weight of what they have done. Jack, however, refuses responsibility. He uses the tragedy to tighten his grip, insisting that the beast is real and more dangerous than ever. The island fractures completely. Jack breaks away, forming his own tribe on the far side of the island. He crowns himself chief not through election, but through fear and force. His followers abandon names, rules, and memories of home. They paint their faces, perform rituals, and hunt not just animals, but dominance itself. The signal fire is neglected, replaced by feast fires that serve no purpose beyond indulgence. Ralph and Piggy are left with dwindling numbers and fading hope. The conch shell lies cracked and ignored, its authority reduced to a fragile symbol no one respects. Piggy's glasses, once used to start the signal fire, are stolen by Jack's tribe, granting them control over fire itself. This theft is more than practical. It represents the final transfer of power from reason to brutality. As night falls again, Ralph stares into the darkness and feels something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Not just fear of the beast, but fear of the boys themselves. The island has not changed. The boys have. What was once an experiment in survival has become a revelation of human nature, stripped bare. And as the fires burn brighter in Jack's camp and dimmer in Ralph's, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The greatest danger on the island was never the beast in the forest, but the one growing inside them all. Jack's tribe now fully separated, the island no longer holds a single community, but two opposing visions of life. On one side stands Ralph, clinging to the fading idea that order, rules, and rescue still matter. On the other stands Jack, ruling through fear, spectacle, and violence. The boys who follow Jack do not do so because he is right, but because he makes them feel powerful. In his camp, there is always meat, always chanting, always an enemy to fear. The simplicity of savagery proves irresistible. Jack's tribe establishes itself near a rocky fortress, a natural stronghold that mirrors their mindset. Here, cruelty becomes normalized. Punishment is public. Loyalty is enforced. The boys no longer question commands. They obey. Hunting has transformed from a means of survival into a ritual of domination. Each kill is celebrated not for nourishment, but for the thrill of conquest. Blood becomes a language they all understand. Meanwhile, Ralph's camp withers, shelters sag. The signal fire, now impossible to light without Piggy's glasses, remains cold. The few boys who stay with Ralph are tired, frightened, and increasingly doubtful. Even Ralph begins to feel the seductive pull of Jack's world. He remembers the exhilaration of the hunt, the way chanting dissolved fear into something almost joyful. This realization terrifies him. He understands that the line separating him from Jack is thinner than he wants to believe. Piggy, still holding on to reason, insists they confront Jack and demand the return of his glasses. Without fire, rescue is impossible. The journey to Jack's camp feels like a march toward inevitability. As they approach, the island itself seems hostile, the jungle pressing in as though complicit in what is about to happen. When they reach the fortress, they are met not with discussion, but with threats. Jack has fully embraced his role as tyrant. He mocks Ralph, shatters the last remnants of shared history, and orders his tribe to capture the boys. In the chaos that follows, Piggy clutches the conch shell, its smooth surface reflecting the dying light. He raises it high and speaks, not with anger, but with desperate clarity. He asks what is better, to have rules and agree, or to hunt and kill. For a moment, time seems to pause, as though the island itself listens. Then the moment ends. A rock is released from above. It strikes Piggy with brutal finality, shattering both his body and the conch shell in a single, horrifying instant. Piggy is killed without ceremony, without remorse. The conch explodes into fragments, its authority destroyed forever. In that moment, civilization dies. There are no more rules. There is no shared morality. There is only power. Ralph runs. He becomes prey in a world that no longer recognizes him as human. Jack's tribe hunts him with the same savage delight they once reserved for pigs. They sharpen sticks at both ends, a chilling symbol of how completely empathy has vanished. The island echoes with chants, not of unity, but of pursuit. Fear is no longer abstract. It has a face, a name, and a target. Ralph hides among the rocks and thickets, his body bruised and his mind unraveling. Memories of home flash through his thoughts, schoolyards, uniforms, adults who enforced rules he once resented. He understands now that those rules were not chains, but safeguards. Without them, the boys had become something unrecognizable. His tribe sets the island on fire, not as a signal for rescue, but as a weapon. Flames race through the forest, consuming everything in their path. Smoke fills the sky. The island, once a place of beauty, becomes a burning battlefield. Ralph is driven toward the beach, his escape routes cut off by fire and smoke. Exhausted, terrified, and utterly alone, he stumbles forward with no plan beyond survival. And then, at the edge of the beach, the unimaginable happens. Ralph collapses at the feet of an adult, a naval officer drawn to the island by the massive column of smoke. The hunt stops instantly. The boys freeze, their painted faces suddenly ridiculous, their weapons absurd in the presence of authority. The officer looks upon them with mild disappointment, assuming their savagery is nothing more than childish play. But Ralph knows better. As the reality of rescue sinks in, Ralph breaks down. He weeps not just for Piggy or Simon or the terror he endured, but for the loss of innocence, the end of something pure and irretrievable. Around him, the other boys begin to cry as well, stripped of their masks by the sudden return of civilization. The island falls silent once more, but this time, the silence is heavy with truth. The arrival of the naval officer feels sudden, almost unreal, as though the island itself has exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Flames still crackle behind the boys, smoke coils into the sky, and the jungle smolders in quiet defeat. What was once a playground of freedom has been reduced to ash by fear and violence. The officer surveys the scene with confusion and faint amusement, unaware that he has stepped into the aftermath of something far more serious than a childish game. To him, the boys are merely lost schoolchildren who failed to behave properly. To Ralph, they are survivors of a truth too heavy to explain. Boys gather on the beach. The masks of paint and power dissolve. Jack, once a feared tyrant, shrinks back into an embarrassed schoolboy, his authority evaporating the moment adult presence returns. His spear hangs useless at his side. No one chants, no one obeys. The structure of savagery cannot survive the gaze of civilization, yet the damage it caused remains, carved deeply into memory. Ralph stands apart, trembling. The tears he sheds are not only for Piggy, whose intelligence went unheard, or for Simon, whose goodness was destroyed by fear, but for something less visible and far more profound. He mourns the loss of innocence, the moment when the boys crossed an invisible line and discovered what they were capable of becoming without rules, without accountability, without conscience. The island was not the cause of their transformation. It merely removed the barriers that once restrained them. The officer, symbol of order and authority, represents the world the boys came from. Yet beyond him lies a warship, a reminder that the adult world is itself immersed in violence. This quiet irony lingers in the background, unsettling and deliberate. The boys were not corrupted by isolation alone. They were shaped by a world already at war. The island did not invent cruelty. It revealed it. Boys prepare to leave. The island remains behind, scarred and silent. It stands as a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting what happens when societal structures vanish. The conch shell lies shattered, its fragments scattered like the remnants of lost ideals. Piggy's glasses are broken, no longer capable of producing fire or clarity. The signal fire, meant for rescue, became an instrument of destruction. Every symbol of civilization has been twisted, proving how fragile order truly is.